All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Unlimited Q&A here at the Unlimited YouTube channel. For the time being, these Q&As are going to be happening every Wednesday. So be on the lookout every Wednesday for a Q&A video or a video of some kind. There will be some content every Wednesday here on this channel. If you have a wrestling or sports question, don't be afraid to send it my way. I try to answer all of them, or at least most of them. So if you have a question, send it my way. That's about it. Let's get started with this Q&A. Chris Rubio, it seems NXT is going back in time, as at the Great American Bash, it'll be Io Shirai taking on Sasha Banks. Does NXT want to continue going back in time, or should their women's division step up to challenge the current champion? In fairness to NXT, I don't watch NXT, so I can't even tell you who their women's division is. Do they want to continue going back in time, like picking out people from Raw and SmackDown to bring to NXT? If you're NXT, you need any help you can get. They just won the ratings last week, I believe. If I'm wrong on that, correct me, but I believe they beat AEW last week. So if they want an advantage or need an advantage, they're going to go to Raw and SmackDown and get advantages. Bring in some old talent from NXT to incorporate them into the current NXT show. I'm actually perfectly okay with that. I don't see any problem with that. So, should their current women's division step up? No, not if it doesn't deliver them ratings. So, Sasha Banks going down there. I could see Bayley going down there when Becky Lynch comes back and when Charlotte comes back eventually. I can see them going back down there. Yeah, I'm perfectly okay with that. Adam Cole, an impressive title run for Adam Cole and current North American champion Keith Lee. Is Keith Lee the one to stop the current reign of Adam Cole? If not Keith Lee, then who? Again, in fairness, I don't watch NXT, so other than Keith Lee, I don't really know who's a big deal right now in NXT. I think it would have to be him. I feel like it would have to be Keith Lee. It would have to be. Because I honestly can't think of anybody else. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. And again, I have not watched NXT in God knows how long. I assume that the Undisputed Era is still together. If it got to a point where Undisputed Era was going to break up, I could see maybe one of the other members winning the title. But I think it has to be Keith Lee. I think it has to be. The Robert Stone brand. Thoughts on the gimmick? I'm going to be completely honest. I have no idea who that is. Is that an NXT thing? Is that a SmackDown thing? I don't know. I don't know who that is. So, just saying. Sorry, I have to move my phone closer because the lettering is so small. So after getting traded to Raw, Dolph Ziggler gets an automatic championship match. Is WWE running out of competitors to challenge Drew McIntyre? Yes. And that's sad. Because this is the typical WWE thing. They'll build up a champion, and they won't build up any challengers. So here you have a champion is just facing anybody on the roster. That's really what it is. I mean, I understand that there's a little bit of storyline history to it, but Dolph Ziggler? Really? At WrestleMania, you had him face Brock. And not even half a year later, the only person that Drew McIntyre can face is Dolph Ziggler. Yeah, that just about figures. In the repackage of the Fiend Bray Wyatt, I don't know where this question is going. All right, let me say it like this. Do you think Braun Strowman is winning another match against Bray Wyatt? Do you think WWE rushed him back? I assume by him you mean Bray Wyatt. No, they didn't rush him back. But this is just another example of WWE not knowing what the hell to do with him. Which is crazy to think because He has the type of gimmick where you can literally go anywhere with him. You can go anywhere with him. You can make him a heel, you can make him a face, you can do cinematic matches, you can do regular matches, you can go between different characters, and it's just another example of WWE not knowing what the hell to do. So, do I think Braun is winning at Extreme Rules? Probably. Wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised. Do you think WWE rushed Liv Morgan back? Does it really matter? Does it matter? Does Liv Morgan matter? No offense to her. Does she matter? So I'm sorry, but I can't really answer that because I don't. Whether they rushed her back or not, it's ultimately not going to matter. So, Summerslam is the next major event in pay-per-view. Would WWE be able to... Do you think WWE is going to be able to build up proper storylines and matches leading up to SummerSlam? No. It's WWE. They don't build up anything properly ever. Oh, man. I mean, they can, but they won't. They'll cut corners. They won't go all the way with storylines. Trying to think of the best way to word this. I'll just say it straight up. They'll half-ass it like they always do. You know, they'll focus on one storyline or multiple storylines that aren't good, and then the storylines or the feuds that people actually care about, they won't focus on. It's typical. How long will the Monday Night Messiah gimmick with Seth Rollins last? It's too soon to just end it now. So, I could honestly see it going all the way to next WrestleMania. I really can. Because right now, WWE needs a top heel on Raw. And if Rollins is the guy, then I think that he needs that gimmick. So, yeah, I could see it going all the way until WrestleMania. Maybe at WrestleMania, if it gets to a point where Roman Reigns says he's ready to come back, that could be an instant WrestleMania match. Because it works so perfectly. Especially if Reigns is going to continue being the top babyface or the quasi top babyface. Yeah, I could see Rollins having that gimmick until next year. I really can. Thoughts on MVP working with Bobby Lashley? I'm fine with Bobby Lashley having some sort of a mouthpiece, but you just got done with having a mouthpiece for him in Lana, and you're immediately going straight to another guy, or another person, I should say. If they do the right things, which they won't, then it could work. It could work tremendously. I think that they could work very well together. But they'll ultimately screw that up too. Even though Raw and SmackDown have been taped since COVID-19 began, do you think WWE should... I don't know what one has to do with the other, but let me answer it this way. Should WWE keep bringing in Ric Flair for shows? No. But, and this is what I'm going to say. It's so easy to blame WWE, and they do deserve blame. This is the same company that, up until recently, hasn't even been testing their employees. This is the same company that, at WrestleMania, had two 50-plus-year-old men in main events during a global pandemic that affects older men or older people in the world. And I understand, 50s, that's not really old, but it's a much higher risk for them, is what I'm saying. So, it's the same company that did that. Yeah, like I said, it's the same company that hasn't been testing its employees. So, no, They shouldn't, because Ric Flair is much, much older. He has many more health issues. And they shouldn't use him. I don't think they should have used him from the beginning. I think Randy Orton and Edge could have did this by themselves, had a feud just with them. But as much as I want to blame WWE, ultimately Ric Flair still agreed to show up. So you have to hold him accountable too. It's so much easier to just blame WWE, and I get that. They deserve blame. They've done a lot of crap. But at what point do we look to the other side and realize that not everything's their fault? And if Ric Flair agreed to it, obviously this is what, when it becomes, let me rephrase that. This is when you really see what effect money has on you, or has on people. Because ultimately, if Ric Flair actually cared about the risk, he wouldn't be doing it. Look at Roman Reigns. He was worried about the risk, and he didn't show up. And he hasn't been showing up. Ric Flair didn't care about the risk. So now he's going to be held accountable for it. And if something, God forbid, happened to him, ultimately it would be his fault, not the WWE's. WWE invited him back. Ric Flair could have easily just said no. So ultimately, if it doesn't bother him, if it doesn't affect him, then it's his decision, and he needs to lay in bed and lie with it. It's that simple. It's, again, I understand people want to blame WWE for everything. This will be one of the only times I actually defend them. They invited him. He said yes. So, there you go. From each division, AL and NL, which teams are going to be contenders, surprise dark horse teams, excuse me. Contenders, probably the same 6 teams that won their respective divisions last year. The wild card teams will be tough, because if you look at, let's say for the NL East, for example, if you look at the Mets and especially the Nationals, last year they were second half teams. All of their success in the season came in the second half. So this is basically a shortened first half. So will that affect the Nationals? Will that affect the Mets? Will that affect other second half teams? It's a big, big what if. So I think that the division winners, the division contenders, I should say, are all going to be the same as last year. So you got the Astros, the Yankees, the Braves. You've got the Dodgers, I believe the Cardinals won that division last year, and the Twins. I think they're all locks to me, at least to me. But the dark horse teams, since you asked for dark horse teams, Arizona, I think that a lot of people are sleeping on them. I think Colorado, because even though their pitching hasn't been good, they still have a ton of hitting. Still have guys like Arenado and Dahl in their lineup, so maybe even a breakout for McMahon. If Charlie Blackmon doesn't recover from COVID, maybe you see a rise up in guys like Brendan Rodgers, guys like Garrett Hampson. Who else would be a dark horse team? That's the NL. In the AL, the White Sox. It'll be interesting to see how some of their young guys develop. I'm pretty sure that they're going to go into the season with Luis Robert in the starting lineup. another season out of Lucas Giolito. They're going to hopefully get some improvement out of Dylan Cease, the return of Michael Kopech. So there are a lot of things for the White Sox that are working in their favor right now. And even though the Twins, I think, are still going to run away with the division, it wouldn't shock me if one of the wild card teams come the end of the year is going to be the Chicago White Sox. It really would not surprise me. As far as any other dark horse teams, even though they're injured, or even though a lot of their guys are now gone and or injured, the Red Sox are still going to be in it. I never count the Red Sox out. I just never do. They're always going to be in contention or at least in the mix for something. So I'm not going to count them out this year just because they lost a lot of guys. Because they still have a lot of talent. Anyone else? Other dark horse teams. Let me backtrack for a second. I think that if I'm looking at each division, the one that has the best chance of being overtaken by another team is the NL East. And no, it's not because of the Mets. It's not because of the Nationals. I could honestly see the Phillies winning the NL East. I really can. Because like I mentioned earlier about second half teams, and the Mets were a second half team, the Nationals were a second half team, the Phillies were a first half team. So you have to factor that in. You also have to factor in they have a new manager, Joe Girardi, who has a history of managing winning teams. So odds point in their favor right now. So if the Braves don't wind up winning the NL East, I think another sort of, I guess you can call them a dark horse, that can come into the mix is the Phillies. Yeah, there we go. Even though the season has not started yet, is Jacob deGrom the favorite to win a third Cy Young Award? Yeah. I mean, he's already won it back-to-back years. He's, the current reigning Cy Young winner, so of course he has the built-in advantage anyway. It's going to be interesting to see how they do the awards, considering that it's only 60 games. Are they still going to do them? Or are they still going to... Or maybe they're going to reword them or repackage them. It'd be interesting to see. Who are your picks? And that'll actually lead to this question. Who are your picks for the AL and NL Comeback Players of the Year, even though it's only a 60-game season? Again, I'm wondering if they do that. Because it doesn't make sense for... let's say if last year somebody who's usually very good, I'm just using this as an example. Let's just say Mike Trout. And last season, let's just say Mike Trout had a bad year, like a not Trout year. Maybe he hit in the low 240s or 250s. His power was down. His on-base percentage was down. His defense was regressing. Let's just say hypothetically that happened. I'd find it very hard to imagine Mike Trout having a monster 60-game season and that being classified as a comeback season. With that said, I'm going to humor you. And if I had to pick two guys, in a perfect world where both of these guys are healthy, which I highly doubt is going to happen, but we'll see. I'm going to go straight to the two New York teams. One of them is going to be Giancarlo Stanton, and one of them is going to be Cespedes. In a perfect world where they're both healthy, and they both play a full season or at least close to it, I could see them winning Comeback Players of the Year. I could see it. But ultimately, at least one of them, if not both of them, are going to be hurt at some point. I can just feel it. I feel it already. And we're still almost a month away. So, yeah. Bret Lickey, in hindsight, would WWE have been better to go dark during this pandemic, similar to other sports? Yes. It's interesting because one of the most talked about topics and the most debated topics in wrestling is what if wrestling, specifically the WWE, had an off season. This would have been the perfect opportunity to do it. This would have been the perfect chance that the WWE had to have some sort of an off season. Once you got through with WrestleMania 36, they should have been off television. Once you got done with the biggest show of the year, they should have been gone. Refresh, make sure your performers are safe, make sure they're healthy, make sure they're being checked, make sure nobody in your damn company has COVID. It could have given them an opportunity to put proper health protocols in place, God forbid. Would have given them an opportunity to refresh, think of new storylines, think of new talent for the title contenders for all of the titles, not just the world title, because guess what? You have other titles too. Would have been the perfect opportunity for Raw and SmackDown specifically to be off the air for a few months. It would have made so much sense. And at least if you didn't have Raw and SmackDown, and if you still wanted to have some sort of a weekly show, put all eyes on NXT. You're in a ratings war, if you even want to call it that, with AEW. How about instead of focusing on 3 shows a week, you put all of your efforts, all of your resources, if you must have a weekly show every single week, put all of your resources in NXT. Whether that's guys on the main roster, whether that's legends, whether that's Hall of Famers, whether that's celebrities, you name it, put all of that effort into NXT, because right now NXT is the one competing with AEW, not Raw and not SmackDown. So why not give them the leverage? Why not give them the advantage that they need to compete with them? Or if you were just going to stop all WWE programming, what's the harm in that? What's the harm in that? And I'm not just going to crap on WWE for this. AEW is in the same boat. So is Impact Wrestling. Right now, nobody cares about your products. Nobody cares about television shows right now. Nobody cares about sports right now, even though it's great that they're coming back. Global pandemic. People are dying. Nobody cares about your shows. So why don't you show that you care for your fan base and go off the air for a little bit? Come back strong. Make sure your employees are healthy, safe. Just a thought. Just a thought. Walter Main, what do you think is the biggest what if in baseball history? Oh, man. First one that comes to mind, and it's not even just baseball history, it's sports history. First one that comes to mind is Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson was a beast. He was a great player. Tremendous player. And he was a tremendous player in both sports. Could have been the first ever 2-sport Hall of Famer. It's the biggest what if that I can think of off the top of my head. Do you think that the 1985 World Series between the Cardinals and Royals is the World Series most affected by bad umpiring? If not, what is? In fairness, I don't remember every single detail about every single World Series. So, I'm going to say no. Because, yes, there was a huge blown call in Game 6 that may have turned the tables a little bit for the game and gave the Royals more of an advantage than the Cardinals. At the same time, the Cardinals still had a Game 7 to play and lost. So even if it's the top or the World Series most affected by bad umpiring, it's not like the Cardinals didn't have a chance to redeem themselves. They did, and they blew it. So, who are the Cleveland Browns of the NBA, NHL, and MLB? Wow. Oh, man. Who am I going to anger the most? Who am I going to anger right now? Oh, man. It's a good question. You mentioned, I believe, the Grizzlies, the Hurricanes, and the Marlins. You hit the baseball one right out of the park. Spot on. Miami Marlins. Because you can say, oh, at least they won 2 World Series titles. They have that to be proud of. Yeah. And they have nothing else really to show for it. They are the epitome of a team that won titles with luck. And then they decided, instead of trying to build a long-term dynasty that could have lasted them for years, they decide after winning 1 World Series, let's dismantle the team completely. Then they win the next World Series. What do to follow it up? They dismantle the team completely. And of course, back in 2016 and 2017, when they actually had the makings of a contending team with probably one of the best, if not the best outfield in baseball of Stanton, Ozuna, and Yelich, they decide to trade all of them away, change ownership, and trade all of them away for basically peanuts. That's the Miami Marlins. That's a Mickey Mouse organization. That is the biggest disgrace to baseball. Biggest disgrace of an organization. Easily. I think they're the Cleveland Browns of the MLB. Easily. I could have easily went with the Mariners. I could have easily went with the Rays. I could have easily went with, other teams that haven't won the World Series, like the Rockies. You could definitely make an argument for all of them, but it's got to be the Marlins. It has to be the Marlins. I have never seen a team alienate a fan base so much. There's a reason why fans aren't in the stadium during Marlins games. It's because of the crap show that organization has become. So, for MLB, Marlins. For the NHL, you said Hurricanes. Okay. I'll actually use championships for this. At least the Hurricanes won a cup. They figured something out, and they won a cup. So yeah, I'm not gonna use them. The Buffalo Sabres, especially recently with the developments of their front office. Buffalo, easily. Another one for the NBA. You said the Grizzlies. I'm going to go a slightly different direction, and I'm going to say the LA Clippers. They are the second Los Angeles team. They play second fiddle. They are the annoying little brother of the LA Lakers. They always have been. They always will be. It's amazing that they still share an arena together, because how do you associate a team like the Clippers with a dynasty like the Lakers? That's crazy. They're a team that has been around for a very long time, that has made it to multiple playoffs, and has not even made it past the conference finals. They have never even been to the NBA finals. They're a team every year that gets hyped up as being the next best team, the next big thing, the next champion, and they don't do a damn thing. Every single year. Much like the Cleveland Browns in the last couple of years. After going 0-16 that one year, turn around. They get the franchise quarterback. They give him some weapons, and every year they get hyped up. Oh, maybe the Cleveland Browns are going to turn around. Oh, maybe the Cleveland Browns are going to make a splash. Oh, maybe the Cleveland Browns are going to make the playoffs. Maybe they're going to go to the Super Bowl. Who knows? And ultimately, that never happens because they're the Cleveland Browns. Same goes for the LA Clippers. Easily. Clippers fans can be mad all they want at me. I don't care. It's the LA Clippers. Period. But other than that, I think you got the baseball one spot on, like I said. There are a couple you could have made an argument for the NHL, but I will go with Buffalo, and for the NBA, I'm going to go with the Clippers. Who is the one athlete from each of these sports do you think gets too much praise historically? Wrestling, baseball, football, basketball. Okay. Basketball, I'm not going to answer because I don't know. Football, maybe Peyton Manning. Because, yeah, he was a great regular season quarterback and probably one of the all-time greats, if not one of the 5 best, maybe. But then you look at his playoff performances, and even though he won 2 Super Bowls, the second Super Bowl, he didn't really look that great. And in the playoffs, he's been known to choke. So, yeah, maybe Peyton. Maybe that's not a good answer, but I'll go with him. Baseball might get a little bit of hate for this. Nolan Ryan. Don't get me wrong. Nolan Ryan can strike a lot of guys out. He had the stuff, but he was so wild. There's a reason why he never won a Cy Young Award. It's because with all those strikeouts, he also produced similar numbers of walks. And even though he got 7 no-hitters or pitched 7 no-hitters, he was not an all-time great pitcher. Had a lot of strikeouts. But everything else was just kind of meh. So maybe Nolan Ryan. And for wrestling, too much praise by fans or too much praise by the WWE? Because if I'm going too much praise from the WWE, I would say John Cena. If I'm going too much praise from fans, historically, Shawn Michaels. Because he's one of the top in-ring performers in WWE. But he gets a little bit too much credit for WWE's turnaround in the late 90s when he wasn't there for 4 years of them. So, yeah, Shawn Michaels. Same question, but not enough praise. Jeez. Again, basketball, I'm not going to answer. I'm actually not going to answer football either because I really don't know. Baseball doesn't get enough praise. Jim Thome. One of my favorite players. One of the nicest guys in baseball. And somebody that was never the best at his position. He was never one of the top 2 or top 3 first basemen or third basemen or DHs, whatever position he was playing. But he quietly put together an all-time great career. He did that out of the spotlight. He wasn't one of those players that would hog the spotlight. He was kind of one of those players that would fall back and, let the teams around him kind of work with him. So, yeah, I would go with Jim Thome. Put together a 600-plus home run season and a Hall of Fame induction, so I might go with him. And for wrestling, that one's a tough one. Because, again, are we going by fans or are we going by WWE? I'm actually going to go with a lot of the guys in the 80s and 90s because nowadays everything is kind of thrown back to in-ring quality and in-ring action and in-ring performance. So every time fans look at stuff from the 80s and 90s, especially fans that are young, they look at the stuff from the 80s and 90s and they don't like it. They think it's boring. They think it's cartoony and stupid looking, but it was that cartoony and stupid looking product that got WWE national and international exposure. and it got them the highest ratings in wrestling history for the big event with Hogan and Andre in 88 or 87 or 88. It was one of those two. It was that corny, well, not corny. It was that de-emphasis on in-ring action and more of an emphasis on the characters and the storylines and the feuds that got 93,173 people to show up to WrestleMania 3. It wasn't in-ring action. It was a focus on characters and storylines. So, yeah. What do you think is the most important trade, free agent signing, and World Series in baseball history? Ooh. I don't really. Does this count? I'm wondering if this counts as a trade, since he was technically sold. He wasn't traded. Babe Ruth from the Red Sox to the Yankees. That would definitely be high up on the list, probably number one. So I'll count that as a trade. Free agent signing. Free agent signing. Most important in history. Ooh. It's actually a good question. I don't know. Most important World Series in history. Can maybe make an argument, for 2016, the Cubs, because it was their first title in 108 years. Free agent signing, jeez. Maybe Barry Bonds going to the Giants, because he had very good numbers with the Pirates and was probably an all-time great Pirate, but he wasn't really the great Barry Bonds that we know him as, whether he was roided or not, until he got to the Giants. So I'll probably go with Bonds. What wrestling show on paper were you not interested in that ended up surprising you? Oh, God. It's another good question. Trying to think of like a recent one. But then if I say like WrestleMania 35 or WrestleMania 34, people are going to say like, that's a good question. Oh my God, I completely misread that. Wrestling show. I keep thinking WrestleMania. I'm sorry. God, this is tough. Oh man. I'll go with WrestleMania 35 because I was a little bit excited for it, but definitely not as much as I wanted to be, and it was probably it was actually a good show. It was actually easy to sit through for the most part. So I'll go with WrestleMania 35. What wrestling move over the years do you think has become watered down? Suicide dive. Seems like everybody and their mother does one. Suicide dive. In an alternate history, 2003, the Cubs and Red Sox don't choke. Who wins the World Series? Oh, God. I still think that the Yankees wind up in the World Series, but I think they would have faced the Cubs. I still think they would have faced the Cubs. And who would have won? Could maybe make an argument for the Cubs. They could have. They definitely could have. What is the greatest baseball game you've seen in person or on TV? In person, I actually talked about it in the last Q&A. It was almost a double no-hitter between the Mets and the Giants with DeGrom and Njpw that I went to in 2014. Best game I've seen on TV, going over the past couple of years, two that jump out to me are Game 7 of the 2016 World Series and Game 5 of the 2017 World Series. Those are two that jump to mind. Two that come to mind. What are your favorite wrestling finishers? What finishers do you find most unique? Favorite wrestling finishers. One of my personal favorites is P.D. Williams, the Canadian Destroyer. I've actually always been a fan of the RKO. I'm a fan of what else? Obviously the Stunner, obviously the Pedigree. Yeah, that's about all I can think of. And what finishers do you find most unique? Probably Canadian Destroyer, like I said. Again, that's pretty much all I can think of. How long do you think Drew McIntyre holds the title for? At least until SummerSlam, if not maybe Survivor Series, but that's kind of pushing it. I can at least see him holding it until SummerSlam. Who would you have induct Undertaker into the Hall of Fame? Vince. It's Vince McMahon's greatest creation. It's gotta be Vince that inducts him. It's gotta be. Maybe Kane, but I think it would have a major effect if it was Vince. I think so. If NJPW expanded more into the US, would they be another legit competitor to WWE? Probably. Yeah, probably, but you would really have to incorporate like English commentary, English announcers. You would have to make it as Americanized as you can, which could be a challenge for NJPW. Could be. Do you think Shane Douglas, if he was allowed to be more like his ECW character, would have worked in the Attitude Era? He had excellent mic work and was very solid in the ring. I agree. I don't think he ever could have been like world champion, maybe a dance partner for a guy like Austin or The Rock. Could see him being a very good mid-card guy. Definitely a good IC title contender, which in the Attitude Era, there's really nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. The best part of the Attitude Era was no matter where you were on the card, you mattered. You mattered. Whether you were the world champion, the IC champion, even the hardcore champion, tag champions, women's champion, you mattered. And you were treated like you mattered. I miss that in wrestling. But yeah, I'll go with, or I'll say yes. Could have been successful. I don't know if he was like main event worthy, but he could have been successful. If you could erase one pay-per-view from WWE history, what would it be? Easy, Over the Edge 1999. Because A, obviously I would like to eliminate Owen Hart dying, and B, I would like to eliminate the show going on. It's completely ridiculous that it went on. It's still ridiculous, and it's 21 years later. God. What is your favorite NXT TakeOver and your favorite TakeOver match? My favorite TakeOver would probably be the first Brooklyn show. My favorite TakeOver match, one of them is Sasha and Bayley in the Iron Woman match. I'll go with that. Was there ever a spot you saw where you thought someone was seriously injured but they weren't? Oh, yeah. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there have been. I'm sorry that I'm drawing blanks, but so many questions and just I'll try to think of one. You talking in person or are you talking just in general? In general, the first one that comes to mind, WrestleMania 25. Undertaker could have easily had a broken neck after that night. And he didn't. Thank God. Because that spot with the dive and him landing on his head the way he did was absolutely insane. It was insane. And that was probably the one instance where I'm like, oh God, Undertaker's injured. This guy's injured. Like there's a problem. Like you should probably handle this. When do you think the art of stealing bases was lost? Do you ever see it coming back? Honestly, it was lost when Rob Manfred took over as commissioner of MLB. And I don't see it ever coming back until Rob Manfred is no longer commissioner of MLB. Do you prefer high-scoring games or pitchers' duels? Personally, if I'm going in person, high-scoring games. If I'm watching on TV, pitchers' duels. What is your favorite manager freak out in MLB history? This is going to be the last question. One outside of MLB and one in MLB. Outside, I'm not sure, but inside, you can't go wrong with Lou Piniella. You can't go wrong with Lloyd McClendon. Lou Piniella obviously taking first base and throwing it into the outfield. Lloyd McClendon taking first base and completely just taking it away and into the dugout. So yeah, I'll go with those two. Anyway, thank you guys for the questions. It's another long video. I apologize for that. Hopefully next week, I'm hoping for more questions, but maybe I can try to answer them in less time. But thank you for the patience. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for subscribing. And I'll be back next week with another video. Thanks, guys. See you later.